Oh, I got it. And while you're doing that, I want to give a shout out to Todd Baldwin and Risley Brewing Company for hosting us here. Thank you very much. And it was really Dave's idea. Instead of hosting,
it was my idea.
It was his idea. I want to make sure I get that point in there. Instead of hosting this at a library or a school or someplace like that, the idea was to host these in a community-oriented place, but that's a small business. And I think no better way to celebrate small business than to gather, and hopefully everybody's going to buy a beer and have something to eat here. Red Lake over the years, I'm probably going to get the numbers wrong. I mean, it's been a $10 million+ investment that Red Lake has made into this facility and into our community. And Todd has been, I think, very proactive and vocal in how the small business community needs to be supported by the city and by the Chamber and EDC. And I think Dave and I, as small business owners, absolutely understand that. That really resonates with us. Again, I think it's really great, really smart for us to host something like this at a small business venue. So again, thank you.
Two weeks ago, we were at...
2 weeks ago at
Beer Works.
Beer Works.
Yeah, and then next week we'll be at Trainwreck.
Yep.
So hopefully the last one's not a train wreck. So anyway. Well, you want to?
Absolutely. So,
started.
Yeah, we'll kick it off. So I'm Brian Risley and David Leinweber. Our little shtick here is state of the community. What we're really interested in doing is not only sharing with you what we've been working on in almost the year that we've been on City Council, but we really want to make this an interactive venue where you can ask questions and where we can really hone in on the things.
Come on in.
Yep, come on in.
Grab your phone, scan the barcode.
Oh, right there. We want to hone in on the things that are of most interest to you. So instead of us just rambling on for an hour about what we think is interesting, we really want to focus on the topics of concern that you all have. And so hence, what
we're going to have this little exercise.
What we're going to do here, yeah.
All right. So everyone got the barcode scan? Because I think, can you get it next one? I think you have to. I don't remember. Anyway, so we're going to start off with a question. What's your biggest concern for the Pikes Peak region? What I want you to do is think about like one word or like a two-word phrase and type that in. So like one word or a two-word phrase and type that in.
And you can type in as many as you want, so it's not like you only have one answer.
But what we want you to do is if you see something here that you like, type that word in too, okay? So the idea is that you can add something new or you can elevate a word that's already here. We'd like you to do like, maybe 6 times, kind of hit it, so we kind of get an idea. It's like we've got safety at the front, potholes is get pretty big, illegals is big, growth. This is kind of helping us understand kind of who's in the group, what's kind of going on.
Yeah, I definitely see safety as a key concern there. Okay?
Yeah, I think safety's kind of owning it right now. Homeless.
Development, emergency readiness.
What else we got?
Yeah, shoplifting pop in there.
Shoplifting, we got that? All right, so I don't even know if I can turn it on. Can I make them stop?
I don't know.
All right, we're good. So stop putting in stop. Because the words keep moving around on me. I think, I don't know if I can like stop it.
There, it stopped.
Okay.
So, potholes, safety, crime.
Potholes made it to the top.
Yeah, look at that.
So we got crime, that's big, illegals, you can understand that.
Emergency readiness, growth.
But we also have unlegal, yeah. We'll go with letter A.
Education, public safety.
Homelessness.
Yeah.
Overdevelopment.
Overdevelopment, right down here in the woo.
And there's one right there too.
Oh, there's one up there, overdevelopment there.
Construction of open space.
Yeah. All right. So that looks good. I guess it's an idea, kind of what's in the room. And then, so we have a second question. So for those that just came in, if you want to grab your phone real quick, I'm going to give you 1 second to scan that barcode if you want to participate. Because we got one more question. So scan that barcode.
Did you skip ahead?
Okay. Everyone get it? Once I see the phones go down, then I know I'm good. So you guys got it? All right. So now we'll go to the second one. So what's the best thing about the Pikes Peak region? Throw a word out, like one word. If you get too many words, then other people won't hop on your word. So that's kind of the idea, is you want to kind of put a word out there. Open space, scenery, sunshine, history, beautiful, mountains. And then you can keep putting in words, and again, if you want to accentuate a word, outdoor recreation, like that, close access to the mountain, open space, there's a lot of outdoor stuff going on here. It's definitely like that. Fishing, yes, he's speaking my language.
Last time we did
Or her.
because we were at a brewery like tonight,
Yeah.
I think good beer was one that popped
Good
up.
beer popped up. Yeah, I don't see that.
Not yet, not
Not
yet.
yet. Maybe someone's going to ask here now that we throw it out. Incline, beauty, trails, open space, outdoor rec mountains. No, that looks. Well, that's interesting. I'll have to. So I saved last times, and it's different.
It is different.
It's
Yeah.
really, really different.
Which is fascinating because, I mean, a lot of these things, open space, trails, mountains, you know, being here on the west side of Colorado Springs, if you live in this area, that's a big part of what you do, right? You enjoy being outside, you enjoy recreating. I live on the west side of Colorado Springs. That's definitely a big part of my lifestyle.
Good beer, like
Good there, finally good beer.
we guilted them. We guilted them.
I did not scan the code, so that's not it. Was that you?
Yeah, I think
we influenced.
I think we did. When we were on the east side of town, I think trails was one. I think outdoor
Public safety
recreation
was the big one over there.
Well, as far as,
And crime.
but not as far as things that they
Oh, that they liked. You're
Yes.
right. You're right. Yeah, they liked. So you're right.
Yeah.
It was trails, and I think it was.
Well, if I remember, small business was one that was
Yeah,
on
small
there.
business came up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with this kind of information, I think. Well, why don't we jump into a couple of them? We saw safety in the first one, right? And that's actually our first, kind of our first topic is public safety. And some of the things that we're kind of working on at the council level is we kind of outlined here when we think about public safety. I think both me and Brian realize and really kind of set the stage for this is we, you know, obviously police is a big part of that. But it's not only that, you know, be honest, a pothole is a public safety issue,
Yeah.
right? And so, and fire mitigation doesn't really have anything to do with the police. And so, there's those type of aspects. When we think of public safety, we try to think of a larger kind of holistic piece.
So those of you that put public safety as a concern, does anybody want to share maybe something specific about what you view as an issue with public safety? Yeah.
So I didn't
Come on in.
specifically put public safety, but I put overdevelopment in the WUI, the wildland urban interface, because the kind of an overarching theme of what I think we're dealing with on the west side that's really troubling. I've been in town since '85. I was involved in the Waldo Canyon fire. I was a part of the recovery effort for the fire and have done disaster recovery work ever since. And I'm recently retired and I still live on the west side. But the development in sensitive areas that are at high risk for fire and flood and the choke points, it's really concerning that the powers that be, the elected officials, don't seem to really take that into account and seriously as these things like the mountain biking park of Blodgett adding 260 parking spaces back there, we were at that meeting today, or after all we went through with 2424 Garden of the Gods, still we're, proceeding with the apartment complex here. Where will people park to support this wonderful small business, and how will people get out when there's another event? And so to me, that's number one.
Well, so first of all, we'll make one statement that we do believe in public property rights, personal, or I'm trying to say that right. Private property rights. Thank you. And if an area, if a particular land has a zoning applied to it, it may not even come to city council. And so there's an element where.
But that doesn't apply with 2424. That doesn't apply with Blodgett. With a lot of these apartment complexes, there are zone changes, there are development plans, there are master plan changes, and there are inherent property rights to the people who have already invested based on the existing master plan too, in terms of quality of life, safety, and all of those things. So I respect property rights. I want my property rights respected too,
No,
not just the developers.
Well, that's why we have a plan. And Brian's been much more involved in the planning world, obviously being an architect.
Yeah,
Not just a fishing rod.
A really good one. I completely understand what you're saying, and I think there is a balance there for sure. Dave and I were not on council when 2424 came through, but obviously both of us paid close attention to that as residents over on the west side. I think it's a matter of understanding what are the real risks, how do we mitigate those. One of the things that the city has taken more active role in recently has been some mitigation efforts in the National Forest, encouraging, well, you shake your head, do you know to the contrary? Because
no, but I just know that is not enough in the current climate of risk. We are at risk of losing our insurance, our homeowners insurance market right now. The state is working on an insurer of last resort.
Well, there is a truth. There's a truth to what you're saying, but not immediately. If we really look at Waldo Canyon, the issue was fuel load, okay? And when you think about a fire.
How about Marshall? 1,200 homes.
Fuel load.
No, grasses.
Fuel load.
There were no
You're right.
trees.
You're right. Big open space, grasses
Houses.
unattended, and then houses that weren't designed properly. Okay, they were destined. It was a high risk thing for them. So that's the challenge. Everyone has a risk. We could have a tornado come through right now. So should we not build because a tornado might come through this area?
Well,
that's the difficult
I
part.
think we have to, and I don't want to, I want other people.
Yeah.
I don't mean to take over, but that for a long time they said, well, we don't have to worry about evacuation here. The council said with 2424 because there's already been a fire, so there can't be another fire. Well, that's not true. Where is that idea coming from? In Hyde Park, in Colorado, there have been fires several times, again, in burn areas. Things are changing, and the amount of mitigation they're doing in the forest is not enough to offset the risk. So I'm not saying nothing should be built, but my gosh, the state's worried about it. The country's worried about it. The insurers are about to bail on us. I think city council needs to be worried about building in the WUI and putting really smart plans in place and requirements for what is built and how it's built.
And we hear your concerns, and we appreciate that.
Thank you.
I see some hands over here.
Something a little closer to home to all of us is the bike trails. A lot of the underpasses aren't well lit. They're just scary to go on. And if we're going to continue to build and infill like I hope we do so that people can move closer to downtown. At least we can get into downtown by taking the bike trails. But right now, they're just dangerous as all heck with the homeless that camp under the underpasses and the lack of lighting under the underpasses. So that's a big public safety issue.
Yep, and as a fellow cyclist, I experienced that as well. I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was a public safety
Okay.
guy, and I know that was the question you initially
Yep.
asked. My issue with public safety is, I know we're understaffed in terms of police. We have an authorized number, we've never been able to reach it. And I'm aware that the police department is working, and with city council and the mayor's office, working really hard to get to that authorized number. My concern is the authorized number isn't anywhere close to our actual need. The problem we have is, right now, you can go to any police car out there, and on their computerized display, there's going to be 35 calls pending. On average, 24 hours a day, 35 calls are going to be pending. Police officers pick the ones they're going to respond to, and a lot of citizens aren't getting a response at all.
Sure.
And I know the police department, if they were here, I'm the president of the police foundation, so, I hear this from the chief. He would say, well, we're coming up with alternate ways to take that information in so we don't have to send a police car. That's of no solace to your citizens that call 911 and get a busy signal. Or they ask for a police response and they don't get one. And it's not good community service. And as a result, the police department gets a bad rap. It's not their fault. They're prioritizing as best as they can.
And I think Dave and I understand that, and a few topics that you mentioned there that I think are worth noting. You're right that we are unable right now to attract and retain the number of officers that we're authorized to have. And to your point that as we grow as a community, that number, by virtue of a bigger city, has to go up, right? So a few things that the city has done and will continue to look at to try to improve their ability to respond. One, leveraging technology. So one of the points we have up here is using it as a force multiplier. And what I mean by that is, rather than having a whole traffic division that's out writing tickets for people speeding through school zones and speeding through construction zones, the police department is looking at implementing something similar to the red light cameras, where at intersections you go through a red light, it takes a picture of you. They're talking about implementing that in school zones and construction zones. So that means that an officer would be out responding to calls as they come in. The second is, that's one of the reasons why the mayor really felt strongly about a training academy, was to be able to properly train and properly maintain the forces that we know we need in the community. And so, although the Tabor retention was voted down, the city is still seriously looking at how to move forward with some form of a training academy or some improvement to the training academy to allow additional forces to be trained adequately. So, good comments. See, go ahead.
So I have a few concerns. I agree with Carrie in the back. My my deceased father-in-law was fired. My husband's retired detective CSPD for 4 years. My brother-in-law retired fireman. So we went through the Walden Canyon. We saw what it did. We weren't far from there. We saw how the evacuation went. So we're familiar with everything that happened. We were here. And I just happen to be related to people that know all about it, right? And are in contact with Rich Brown, who used to be fire chief. So there were a lot of things that could have been better at that. And so what they've been doing is, I've looked at the city plan and how they developed and what they're doing for growing, because they're expecting a growing people here. So you guys are building, not you guys, but the city, with everybody voting, is building on density. So you're stacking people in dense. You're putting as much as you can in smaller areas. And what it's doing in some of these areas, you go out east, there's a lot of area out east. I've seen all the development there. But when you come on the west side and we're closer to the foothills, closer to the mountains, you're also putting density over there as well. So when you try to evacuate from those areas, like they did in Mount Shadows from the fire, that's, I mean, we can't even UNA And if you went up right before I-25, I mean, the traffic, that's a main vein over there. You guys can't even put in a turn signal to get people to turn. There's like an accident there, like every 3 months or 2 months. There's a car accident, people turn because there's so much traffic coming. So there's so much density and so much traffic on the west side, and it can't handle all the cars, exits, and entries. For every piece of land that's available, they're trying to build. Developers keep coming in and trying to build in those areas, and everyone on city council is either approving or not approving, right? And you're looking at housing and giving houses to people, but you're not really paying attention to what the people are saying, because you're looking at what your rules and what you have to follow. Okay, so I agree with them on that. On the second one, I understand that you're trying to introduce the speed safety where the police are, right? Technology, right? Digital. Everybody wants to go digital. I mean, you're here today with digital. Sign up to their ability now, right? So, and I'm not, hey, you guys do a great job. I know you don't get paid much for what you do as city council, and you put up with a lot of crap. I understand that. But I'm able to voice my opinion today for a little bit longer because city council only gives 3 minutes, so I give up. I don't go and I don't talk anymore. There's other ways I can communicate. But here's the thing. When you institute these technology cameras, speed safety, let me ask 2 of you questions. I can't ask all city council, but how many rights do we have under the Bill of Rights in the Constitution? Do you know?
Well, is speeding,
No.
is speeding against the law?
Don't be true.
Is running a stop sign against the law? Just, I mean,
Can you answer my question instead of just right now?
well, we,
How many rights do we have in the Constitution under color? And if you don't know, just tell me. I just want to know if you know.
I can't rattle them off. How many do
We have 31.
Okay.
Okay, so my question to you, and this is an opinion on you because, hey, it's been a long time since we've been to school, right? You know, everybody's in their job to do their job. But when you guys take an oath at City Council to the United States Constitution and to the Constitution of the United States, when you guys are passing ordinances and statutes, that's making sure that all of our rights are protected, because that's your main duty, is to protect our rights and to redress our grievances. So, it is.
oh, sure.
Okay, all right. So, when you look at our Bill of Rights, that's what we reserved in the Constitution, and then we gave the rest to the government. As servants, politicians, that we've given to you the trust of them, right? And we reserved our rights to ourselves. So it is against the Constitution. Because let me tell you why. My brother got a ticket. But he didn't. His daughter was driving the car. And it was turning on a red light or whatever. So he gets this ticket. And he's like, I don't gotta pay this. This wasn't me. Blah, blah, blah. So I'm writing the ticket. The ticket says Colorado Springs, P.O. Box, Tempe, Arizona. Right? It came from Tempe, Arizona. This is the third party that you guys contracted with, or whoever approved it, this contract to go to. So then you look at it, I'm saying, I told them, I'm like, well, all you have to do is go down and show your driver's license. It's not you. They can't do anything about it, right? And they did. They went down, they threw it out, right? But the second part, we are allowed due process of law under the Constitution for anything that goes against us. Any legislative, any ordinance that you write or approve, for us, as the people, we are due due process of law. So if we get a ticket right here for a speeding ticket, the person that, and also here's another thing, so the ticket on there says, I do believe that you went against CRS section 2, whatever, right? That's what their affidavit says. And these people that are, this corporation that's out of Tempe, Arizona, this corporation, they pay somebody $15 an hour, they call them an affidavit specialist. It's not a police officer. They're customer services that don't have any skills that are needed, Microsoft Office, just the basic customer service. So they're hired to sit at a computer all day and look at the screen. And then what they do is they take that picture and then shoot it off to whatever department it is, and then they give you the ticket. It doesn't come from local, it comes from Tempe, Arizona. And this person is swearing an oath under affirmation, under an affidavit, right? Well, when you go into Black's Law, 5th or 4th, and you go into the maximum law, and you look at what the definition of a witness is. A witness must be present at the transaction. So back in the day before you guys, maybe not you because you weren't on council, when they approved these 10 years ago for just the red light cameras, when they approved those, so back in the day, I'm driving down the road, there's a police officer, my husband was a cop for 34 years in Kentucky, right? So I'm speeding, red light, whatever it is. There's a police officer with a radar, boom, he caught me, I'm speeding. He's physically there, he's present at the transaction. Then I can go to court, I can either pay the fine, or what did they do in the day? And what do they do today still? If an officer sitting there with a radar comes to you, gives you the ticket, then you go to court, that officer has to show up to court, right? If he doesn't show up to court, you have a right to approach your accuser. So what happens is when you go to court, that officer doesn't show up, the judge throws it out. The police officer doesn't write an affidavit.
I understand what you're saying, but you're living in 1960.
No, I'm not.
That's
I'm
how
living
you
in
are.
2023.
Digital is evidence.
No, it's
Let
not.
me give you another example
No,
really
it's
quick.
not. You're
okay?
wrong.
We have a large retail store in town, okay? They have major shoplifting issues.
Right,
So what they're doing is their whole store is laced with cameras.
right.
They actually can find a wrapper that is left over. They trace it back to where the person that dropped the wrapper. They get his picture. They get him taking the item.
Okay.
They record all of that. Then they track him out to the parking lot. They actually capture his license plate because he just gets in his car. Now they have his license plate. They use it on a scanner. They know who this guy is now. They take that information, all the digital information and everything, send it to the police, and the police turn around and show up at that guy's house and arrest him.
They don't arrest them.
Oh, they do.
No, because
Not
you
here.
have to have, as a citizen.
No, they do. I can tell you they do.
I know the law.
Because there's all that proof there.
I know the Constitution, and I know the law. And we are, whether he did that, I agree, he did something wrong, right? He is allowed due process of law through a jury of his peers to a court of record that proceeds by the common law. So if you're taking me into a traffic court ticket, which is administrative court or legislative court, that is not by the Constitution. Legislative and statute do not overrule the Constitution.
Well, so they're.
You cannot make
The only
a mandate that
alternative,
goes
here's
against
the other
Constitution.
alternative, okay? The other alternative.
Let's be
I
okay,
agree.
we get back to public safety.
Yeah, let's get
But
back.
it's-
The only alternative, that is to
Okay.
double our police officers and we have to triple our taxes.
We've got a question over here.
That's a challenge.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let her speak.
Thank you, please.
Let her speak. Next.
Go ahead.
So it's not necessarily a question that's going back to police response time. I just wanted to, I guess not necessarily like advocate on behalf of the homeless, but me and my husband and a couple of friends were out last Saturday doing homeless outreach across from Catholic Charities at the park area. And so while we were out there and we were set up, there was a very aggressive gentleman. They were both homeless, I would assume. And so the one gentleman was on the phone with the police, and I'd say probably a good hour. And I mean, the situation was like pretty, I mean, the guy was like trying to fight him, you know. The other guy was kind of hanging around so like the aggressor wouldn't like interact with him as much. And then he eventually went and got a weapon, and so like they're on the phone and they're like, hey, like this guy is like threatening me, you know, like he punched a different lady in the face, and so like she hopped on the phone. And so the entire time, like a good hour, probably hour and a half, like there was no response time, there was nothing, and then they showed up and we were like, if that gentleman really wanted that guy dead, like he would have been dead, like that would have been a crime scene. And I was like, that, to me, I'm like, that's just not okay. Like I get, you know, people have their viewpoints of homelessness, and you know, maybe there's a stereotype about, you know, what homeless people call. But at the end of the day, like they're still human, like they matter just like the rest of us matter. If we say, hey, you know, our life is at danger, there's a runner in our house, like they still deserve the exact same response. And so, I mean, like I said, they eventually came, the ambulance came and stuff, and the guy was still shouting and yelling the entire time. I mean, they just arrested him and got him in the ambulance. There's no police brutality or anything like that. But to us, like, and we just moved here from Nebraska. My husband was in the military. We're stationed up at the Air Force Academy. But I was just like, I've never seen such lack of response time. And I know you guys said like the police is understaffed, and I'm like, what happens in that situation if someone's on the phone, they're like, hey, like, my life is in danger, like, who does that fall on?
So
Say that
how do
person
we
is-
increase response times? How do we increase response times?
More enforcement.
Okay, they're hiring as fast as they can.
Okay,
So now what do we
but
do?
somehow they're able to accommodate the developers to quadruple density over property rights in a piece of land without quadrupling the services that are required for safety, well-being,
So
quality
with
of
developers,
life.
developers
Let me-
don't get any money from the
Please let
city.
me, please let me finish my thought.
So I don't know,
That is,
I'm trying to understand
no,
that.
no, that is not true.
So how do you connect that to public safety?
Overdevelopment
Okay,
has to be balanced with
The ability to
police
serve
force,
them.
all of your community services have to be in balance, and right now we're out of balance. And I think the crime rates, the homelessness, the police, lack of police force, ability to handle
Water.
this, all of this is because of the overdevelopment that's going on. I think that's the biggest, that's to me the biggest problem we have here is that it's quadrupling all the problems across the city in its entirety.
okay.
So this gentleman's been waiting patiently to comment. Go ahead.
I think we better face a fact here. The police department, roads, parks and rec are purposely underfunded.
Amen.
I mean, let's face it, we need over $2 billion just on infrastructure alone. But you will not hear any one of these gentlemen stand up and say, how many of you are willing to step up and put into the kitty to abolish or get rid of that $2 billion of infrastructure repairs that we need?
Are you interested in voting for 2C?
Nobody has asked, the last question, exactly how much money do you need to get us up to 100% on our police department?
But it seems like with the property tax increase,
What
that the
property
money
tax
would,
increase?
oh my God, we've had like 60% in my
Where do you
neighborhood.
live?
I live off of Mesa and Uinta.
Okay, do you
And
have,
I went down to the city assessors and fought it, and they told me, I mean, basically,
Okay, well-
that's it. But I'm just saying that there's a lot of money that's going into.
So we cut our budget, because our budget is going to have to shrink next year.
why?
Okay, but there's
Because
a
we don't have
should be
enough money.
There's
increasing
a
your
bigger,
budget.
We don't have enough money coming into your
there's a
one.
bigger
Okay.
picture here.
How much in rebates has the city given developers for hotels, retail over the last 20 years?
Zero, actually.
No,
No,
that's not
bullshit.
true.
Zero.
I'll show you the numbers.
They gave
So
Seal $16 million.
I don't know what you're
But
thinking.
you know what?
Developers don't get
But
money
you know
from the
what?
city.
They
They don't.
get
No, they
tax,
take money
they
from the
get
city.
special tax districts.
So,
And
They get
that's a fact.
preferential
On a-
treatment
on
on
a-
the cost of
on a rare-
infrastructure.
We don't really
No,
know.
there's plenty of that, that is.
no, there's not
Yeah,
plenty
but
of that.
can we,
There's
I'm
like-
sorry,
Yeah.
can we just tone it down a little
Yeah.
bit?
No.
I'm with the League of Women Voters, come on, let's tone it down a little bit. And let's just be respectful to our elected officials. I don't agree with everything they're saying, I totally agree with a lot of the stuff we're talking about. Let's just tone it down just a little
Okay.
bit.
We need some honesty here.
Well, I'm trying to
I
get you,
agree.
but you're not hearing
not
me. That's
listening.
why
Well,
you're
I'm-
not listening
We're
to what
not
I'm saying.
listening, we need to listen, and if
Right.
they're not factual, then let's talk about some misinformation, but let's just listen.
Okay, so
First.
let's talk about
So
some
the money that we're
misinformation.
giving to developers, and to your question on rebates, right?
Okay,
Is
no,
it
no.
more than a dozen? Maybe a dozen projects?
If that, yeah,
Something,
Yeah.
it's less than a dozen, I think.
yeah.
What do you think? Is that
I'll,
right?
I'll
How
give you
many
an
developers are
example.
we doing?
Sir, do you want a current example?
Well, okay,
Okay, we were at the Blodgett meeting today.
the park,
The Blodgett master plan
okay, for the new park.
expansion, for the expanded open space. It's a TOPS, it's
A
a
park.
trails and open space
A public park.
development.
A park, no,
Um,
no, it's a public park.
Okay.
I mean, you're trying to, why is that a development? That's not a development. What that is,
You're not going to let me make my point?
well,
My
you can,
point-
but you keep saying development, and that's
Oh.
not what it is, it's not accurate.
They are developing land that under the current master plan is not developed they're expanding the use and the amount of density of people who will be using that land. That land is in the wooing. They are building, we are building. Our community is allowing to be built, overbuilt, many, many massive apartment complexes in this quarter here. There's all kinds of data that proves.
So you're connecting a park
Let
to
me-
an apartment
you're not
complex,
letting
and
me
those are two
finish
different
the
things.
connection,
So
sir.
keep those separate.
No, it's together because the way that developers are gaining traction financially is by being able to waive this. The city is waiving the requirements for parkland dedication. So all of the families that
That's
move
not
into
happening.
this apartment, it is happening right in the
It's
neighborhood.
not happening.
It
I don't know
happened
where you're
with the
getting that
development right here across from Centennial, across from the King Supers on Centennial and Fillmore. It's happening with the apartment complex that they're suggesting here.
So we
There-
have, in our code, we have a requirement. You have, if you build an apartment complex, you have to have X amount of open space in that, or whatever it is. I believe there's something. I'm looking.
They have the ability to waive it in lieu of fees or other things, and that's what's been happening. If you don't know that, I'm sorry, but that is what is happening. And as a result, we have gone from one of the most park-dense quality of life communities to one of the least park-dense quality of life rated communities. And now, to change those numbers, they're increasing the density in this sensitive open space land, but where will the families with little children that move into these apartments, there's no
I
parking.
have to say, I'm sorry, you're just misinformed.
I'm not,
So
sir.
on Blodgett Peak, they're taking 14 miles of trails and are reducing them to 11 miles of trail. They're gonna cut
They're putting in
30%.
260 parking spaces.
Because, you know why? Because everyone's parking in front of people's houses right now. So they're gonna take out and not allow anyone to park on the street anymore. So the entire street will be no parking, so that they can put a nice bike
They
lane
could
in
do that
there.
anyway.
That'll make it a safety thing, okay?
Who's gonna enforce it? The police?
Well,
All the
let's
extra
keep in
police
mind
we
that
have?
that's an open space that all 450,000 people in our city paid for, right? So they should have access. And if they want
For
access,
the original master planned intended use, correct?
well, there's 3 different master plans that were brought together and one new one that's just got approved today by open space.
Yes, I know, I
So-
was at the meeting, and I was actually at the original meeting in 2001.
So
It was
they're
approved.
limiting trails, they're trying to manage people. It's a managed approach, because right now it's chaotic there. There is no management. There's nothing really like gone into a
So
master plan.
so the question is, where will these people that move into this apartment complex bring their children to play before and after school, or their toddlers to play? What park will they bring them to?
There's a number of parks in this area, I'm sure. I mean, that could be one. They could drive up like Blodgett.
There's no walkable parks.
You have Garden of the Gods right here.
There's no walkable parks for
I don't
small
understand. You got
children.
Garden of the Gods right here.
Is that where you bring toddlers to play?
Before you dig
Oh
yourself
my
too
God.
deep,
Okay.
remember, 5.5 acres per 1,000 population. 2.5 acres for neighborhood parks that are walkable, 3 acres per 1,000 for community park. Do you know what our current park space is? Now, this is developed, it's not open space.
Sure.
It is developed parks. Where, do you know where we are?
Citywide, are you saying?
No,
or-
this
I'm not really sure.
area, the Parks and Recreation has defined this particular area called the foothills. So it goes from 24 all the way up to Air Force Academy.
Okay.
Our service level is 2.0. It should be 5.5. So we have 2 acres per 1,000 population. You're looking at, doing all kinds of infill, and you're wrong. They are not providing parks. They're skating out by paying in lieu of.
Yep.
And so what Carrie is saying is very, very accurate. We do not have the parks for the density that the code changes or the zoning changes are being built towards. So we've
Well, I
got to
guess I don't
address
know what
that.
the zoning changes are. I mean,
When you change a zone from,
we don't. No one's been told. No zoning
Dave?
changes have come to
Okay.
us. So-
Okay, you just admitted that it was before your time.
Okay.
Okay, you've been on council a little over a year?
Not even a year, but
Not
close.
even a year,
Yeah.
okay. So when we brought 2424, and again, Mountain Shadows Community Association and others that fought that, the idea was that they wanted to change the zone. So they could put in, it started at 540 apartments. They whittled it down, then they pulled their application at 380.
Well,
So
and city
they-
council said no, right?
They did, but I'm just saying, you've got a strong neighborhood organization here
Yeah.
that has been fighting it. Well, what about the rest of the
I
city?
can't agree with you more. I mean, I love parks. I mean, I totally love
But
parks. And I totally want to
if you're saying that, you're missing what a lot of people are trying to drive at. You're adding infill and no parks. So fundamentally,
And no
there's something
police.
wrong.
Can I ask a question? Did you
Yes.
say that the current Hills service level is 2.0 and we're supposed to be at 5.5? Is that what you said?
That is correct.
Thank you very much. So how do you address that situation right there? I'm sorry to take that, but that was the question.
Well, we have
I
a couple
got.
of things that are coming online. So one is the rock quarry is being recommended. And that whole area will be turned over at some point to the park system. So the rock quarry that I'm sure all of you are familiar with will be, at some point will become parks land. I know of that is happening.
But
That's
they-
the Blodgett Plan
But
Plus.
keep in mind,
It's not active.
open space in those, just like Youth Valley, it's developed parks. The definition of a developed park is there's grass, there could be pavilions, there's ball fields.
Playgrounds.
That is completely different than Blodgett, Youth, and any of these others.
So I guess I'm curious, knowing that there isn't a lot of developable land left on the west side of I-25, in terms of overall proportion, I'm not sure that we're really talking about that much area in comparison to the rest of the city, first of all. And second, I guess I'm just trying to understand, are you thinking that if let's say it's an apartment complex or a townhome development or something along those lines, are you suggesting that they should be required to provide a significant amount of parkland in their development for the rest
They
of
are.
the community?
That's part of the code. And the option is pay in lieu of. The problem is there's too much in lieu of, and there's no parkland that is being set aside for parks.
So if no more development were to ever happen west of I-25 today, we have a problem that we can't fix.
Not necessarily, but,
Well, I wanna understand
what
this.
we're doing is we're taking a problem and we're making it much, much worse in a critical time. So instead of the council and the planning department and the parks department all recognizing the problem and saying, we're not going to give our sign off on this new apartment complex that is maximum density and doesn't have setbacks and doesn't have playground equipment and doesn't have any of the amenities that are needed or the adequate parking. Instead of all focusing on density, what we need to be doing is building actual planned communities. We need to be requiring the right amount of services to be available for the target market for that. That's what they do in places that have enough police.
And so your comments are those specific to the west side of Colorado Springs, or are you talking
Well,
citywide?
I believe it should be done citywide, but
Okay.
the issues may be different in different parts of the city. The issues over by the airport where there are sensitive grasslands and things like that, they have more space to work with. Here we are squeezed in.
So
and
let me just, and I don't mean to cut you off, but
Okay.
just maybe for example, let's say that someone was proposing a large master planned community on the southeast side of Colorado Springs. It sounds to me like you would very much support that because it would be designed and developed in a way that would include parks and open
only
space.
only if the city required those things. And what's happening is they are waiving those requirements in lieu of cash, and then that cash that goes to the Parks Department is, I don't know, I'm just suggesting maybe it's being spent to develop a downhill I'm a mountain biker. I mean, but a downhill mountain bike park in one of the most sensitive areas with the greatest fire danger. We just had a fire that almost went out of control in that area a couple of months ago. And that has one narrow street, doesn't even have full bike lanes, with no egress. And guess where that all has to spill out? It all has to spill out from the same choke points as Waldo. And yet we're gonna put 260 parking spaces there and spend our money on mountain bike trails instead of on providing quality of life park services for families that you're encouraging to move here?
Well, I just have to push back on the blodgett thing continually, because right now we have neighbors that are so excited about parking lots because their front yard has been a parking lot.
Well, that's
forever.
nice, but that's kind of a not in my backyard is what you guys would have said in the
But I don't
past.
understand. I mean, and the city, the entire city bought that land years ago. It could have been all developed by a developer.
But it wasn't, and we
wasn't.
were guaranteed a certain type of use. And so the question is a matter of priorities.
So
and
part of that
location.
land,
It's
there's
being
three parts
smart.
to it. Part of that land has been preserved. There's a section of that land for wildlife. They've done a pretty aggressive look at that entire ecosystem, stuff like that. And they've really worked with a lot of people through this process. Probably the best public process I've ever seen on a parkway. So I have to defend that because I think they've done a really, really
But
good
how does that
job.
answer the question about parks for the rest of the community? The people that live here and pay taxes?
Well, but that's right here. That's
But
Blodgett is your park.
toddlers cannot go there after school to a downhill mountain bike park.
So you're only looking at small children?
No,
That's kind of the impression I'm
No,
getting.
not at all. I'm using that as an example if we want our city to grow.
Okay, well let's
Can we move on?
let's move on to smart stuff.
Please.
Yeah.
And we've spent like 45 minutes on one subject.
Exactly.
Get through the rest of the slides. The rest side watch can take the last 10 minutes and
Yeah, we can pick it up. Let's do offline just afterwards.
Yeah.
We'll
Can I
talk.
have my question answered real quick?
Sure, go ahead.
So I was also at the Blodgett Open Space meeting today, and they talked about spending $7 million on that project. Again, we're talking about priorities. When we talk about not having
Over 20 years.
Well, okay, but we're talking about not having the infrastructure that we need, the roads or the police force. So is that more of a priority for us than a park?
That's a great question.
You know,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that's
I
what I'm
think-
saying. Where do we put our money
Sure.
here, our taxpayer dollars? You know?
Sure,
Do we put it in places that we really need it or that we want it?
sure, that's a great question. Yeah, yeah. Did you have a?
I would just like to move on
He
to
wants to see
slide
that
two.
more slides. So we are working, the city is working on some fire mitigation pieces. Well, we actually are.
When it takes 10 years to do a fire mitigation plan on Wallow Canyon, somebody's head should have rolled on that one.
Maybe talk about that one, Dave.
Oh, okay. Within my campaign, one of the issues that we have is really our homeless population and really mental health crisis that we have. And there's a huge issue from upstream where we're talking about our kids and some of the engagement they have with different components and things like that. Parents trying to find help. I've talked to several people who have, I mean, they have adolescents, their kids, 14-year-olds, who are out on the street because they've gotten addicted to drugs and that's the lifestyle they've chosen at 14. And the parents are left with very few answers. And so trying to work with how to connect that piece and then bring it down on how many police officers do we need with every homeless camp? Is there a different way to do that? And so our city really done innovative things. And I got a shout out to our fire department. It's actually our fire department that's leading this effort. They have the HOP team. They got a number of different teams right now. They're actually working with the criminal justice system where they're meeting some of the homeless people after they finish with the judge because they've come out of jail and they're trying to keep them from going back to the creek and say, hey, why don't we do something different? And so they kind of are walking them to services, things like that. So, because long term, it's a big cost. The rescue mission, I think, came out with a deal. They average every single homeless person is costing the city around $50,000 a year. And it's just reality because when they get hurt, they go to the ER. Okay? When they have a problem, they call 911, and they take that police officer that you don't get, and they're responding to these cases and stuff like that. So we're man, this thing time's out. I can't stay up. It's just killing me.
One of the things that Dave's really, as he mentioned, trying to get upstream of the problem, I think we have to figure out how to address it on both ends of the spectrum. We have to deal with the here and now, the issues that we're facing in real time, but also the more we can get upstream, the more we can look at what's causing a lot of the homelessness issues and what's causing a lot of the problems and figure out how to intervene before it becomes a chronic issue. That's really one of the things that the city has switched their mindset around with the idea of becoming more proactive as opposed to reactionary, because as you just said, it's costing us a tremendous amount of money to deal in a reactionary way with the issue at hand as opposed to spending money wisely to get ahead of the problem before it becomes a chronic.
So one of the ideas it was presented to me is can we hire more professional mental health workers? And sure, but could we really? I mean, $100 an hour, how many people can really spend that? Forever, right? It's just not a reality. I think we have to find a way to engage our community. And so I kind of worked out a challenge for the mayor, actually presented to him while he was actually running. He really liked the idea. And we have launched it this last week. Well, we've announced it this last week. We're going to launch on May 18th. We're going to have a goal of trying to formulate 1,000 neighborhood gatherings across the city and inspire connection within communities, your neighbors. You get permission to go knock on that neighbor's door and say, hey, let's get together. And you can do it a lot of different ways. We have a toolkit online. We're partnering with Because I Love You and with Kono. AMI's part of it, and UCCS. With the GRIT program, we're trying to see if we can get 25,000 GRIT coaches. GRIT is resiliency training that UCCS has. What's that? You're GRIT? I am too. I just got certified a couple weeks ago. But yeah, we're trying to get 25,000 GRIT coaches across the community to kind of really work and address this mental health thing. It's really costing. It's costing our nation with the drug component and some of the other aspects and things like that. So, yeah.
And I was curious on that point because.
Yeah.
And I realize the city's maybe not even the place for this, but potentially as a collaboration with the county. I mean, we used to have facilities that were horribly run in terrible places, not saying let's bring those back, but under today's standards, we used to have a place that you could handle maybe a little bit more of the excessively aggressive cases, like the lady was mentioning, that do take a lot of resources and frankly do pose a little bit more of that direct public safety challenge.
No question.
Is there anything on the front lines of thinking through something like that? Because I know it requires
exactly
state
right.
money. I know there's
our
a
state
state
hospital is down in Pueblo, and it's always full to the brim, and they pre-release people all the time.
So those people, overflow people that are waiting for the state hospital are sitting in our jail right now.
No,
Well,
some of them are, but they pre-release them. They're actually no longer free.
And in the jail.
And they're in the rescue missions.
Yes.
And they're in other type of facilities. But yes, it's challenging, and they're in your neighborhoods. That's no question about it. I think our community, although we haven't solved the problem. I don't think it's a solvable problem. I don't think we'll ever get to zero.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're always going to have the town drunk. I mean, maybe you're any RFP, right? I bring that up. It's funny because like half the room has no.
But
Well, that's true. True, but alcohol's alcohol, right? So, but I think there is a lot of of attention to this right now. And a big piece is respite care. So if someone who's homeless has a medical issue, there is no place to put him. There's no place that will take him. The rescue mission will not take someone with a medical issue because they're not trained for that.
Right.
They have to, rescue missions for individuals that can take care of themselves. We don't have, you know, places where people can assist people that have injury.
Right.
So, and it's a challenge, and I think the county needs to look at it, the county needs to address that. It's a big issue.
Dave, I think we had another comment.
Yes?
Just because I just wasn't here, like, so just looking in September. I guess like how is like the homeless population managed by the city? I guess like, cause there's like different locations, like obviously they hang out under the bridge, by the Springs Rescue Mission, and there are different parts. Like, are they just like allowed to be there, or do you guys kind of try to shift in to like different areas? Like, what does that look like here?
Great question. So Colorado Springs actually has a pretty aggressive stance on homelessness. Prior to Dave and I being on city council, the city passed a no-sit-lie ordinance in certain areas, specifically downtown and medians where they present a danger because they're in traffic and so forth.
And we're looking to add that sit-lie ordinance to
around school zones. Right. The challenge is that there are some constitutional issues that people have the right to be in certain areas. What the city has done though is tried to make the most of the kind of the fringes, I suppose, of what is constitutionally legal and allowable to try to prevent homeless people from congregating in places that are dangerous or otherwise deemed inappropriate. And so because Colorado Springs has taken, like I said, a fairly aggressive stance on all that, we've actually dealt with the situation a lot better than many other communities. If you look at Denver, they've got north of 9,000 homeless people, and they have really struggled with how to deal with that. It's a balancing act because on the one hand, we want to be compassionate. We want to understand that these are people just like us and they're struggling. But I question, is it compassionate to let somebody sit out in the cold overnight when there may be other solutions there? So because the city is not a human services provider, that's not something that the city does. The county, of course, can and does do some of that work, but we don't deal with human services directly. Instead, what the city has been able to do is partner with like the Rescue Mission and others that are in that space. It really lands a lot on the nonprofit world to tend to address directly the issues, but I think to the conversation earlier, the more we can get upstream of that and start to reduce the problems before they become chronic, the better we'll be at overall dealing with the issue.
The hot team will help though, if it's near like a waterway.
Okay.
So like we have an HOA, we have like 2 big summer dashes every year, and we had a few police officers actually come to and talk to our residents in there. And the hot team, if they're near water, I mean like if they're on a sidewalk camping, and that's a drainage like right there that water runs through, call them, they'll come, move them along. Because once they start, I actually spoke with them for like a half hour. So once they start one, another one comes, and next year we got a big camp. So the hot team wants to know, and whether, you know, they've got them sectioned throughout the city, but they want to know, it might take them a few days. So they'll take them, they'll try to help them get to resources. They can't make them, but they'll try to take them to resources, you know, whether it's the shelter, you know, and to the resources where they can like try to get back on their feet. And some that they've talked to, they've been on people's property, their yards that have bigger acreage, and they don't want the help. But they'll move them along. At least the hot team will move along, but they don't want the help.
All right, right there.
I'm just thinking about the impact of legislation though, because you have increasingly adverse bills that are coming down against landlords. So that's going to only worsen the problem. So part of your upstream effort, could it be more kind of strategic, intervention before these bills get here that are actually punitive to landlords and provide a disincentive to rent?
Well, I mean, the core issue is this is such a great place to live. We have artificially inflated prices in Colorado Springs for the last 7 years.
But I think you're absolutely on to something that I think is really important, which is that I don't want to get overly political, but at the state level, there's essentially almost a supermajority. I mean, you've got one party that's in control of both houses of the legislature and the governor's office. So they basically have carte blanche ability to do whatever they deem appropriate in their opinion. The challenge in the past has been that Colorado Springs has not been as vocal as I think we needed to be, whether it's with regard to those kinds of bills or construction defect litigation laws,
Yes.
or CDOT funding or any litany of other topics. And so one of the things that Dave and I have both been very intentional and mindful about is how can we begin to advocate for Colorado Springs in a better way at the state level. And I can tell you, having testified on at least one issue so far, it's very difficult because, again, our view of what we think is right for Colorado Springs is oftentimes counter to what the state's view is for the state in general.
Versus the homeless problem. If he wants to rent, you're gonna have to have now, what, a 90-day
Right.
period before you can evict?
Right.
I mean, why would you even put yourself in that position?
Yeah, I mean, there are a whole host of things that are, I think, contrary to what Colorado Springs really wants. Another big one was last year, there was a proposal to allow the state to mandate certain aspects of zoning, so or allow zoning control at the state level instead of the local level. That was before we were elected, but had I been on council, I absolutely would have gone up and testified in opposition to that, because when you take away local zoning control, all of the problems that you guys are talking about here tonight, parks and open space, evacuation routes, density, all of that goes out the window. We have no control over any of that if it's mandated at the state level. So those kinds of things, to your point, ma'am, are huge issues that we've got to get in front of with the state. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem to matter at this point how loud we scream locally, they're going to still try to push
Well,
forward.
and we're trying to be prepared for some of that. We are a home rule city, and so our attorneys are all kind of gearing up for when.
The eventuality will be that there will
happen.
be a law that gets passed at the state level that we feel is very onerous and disastrous for our community. And to Dave's point, as a home rule city, our only choice at that point would be to try to file a lawsuit or an injunction against the state and at least delay whatever's happening. So we are prepared.
I mean, my question was like in Lamar, housing is much cheaper. It is.
Or affordable.
That's my point.
So can I ask something real quick?
Sure.
Regarding, you mentioned I'm a realtor, so I hear inflated prices and, you know, the view that's out my back window is $1 million view. So I'm happy with the home price that I purchased my home.
Well, that's what I'm referring to.
So with
It's just
regards
the
to
value.
affordable housing, let's talk about what the actual price is, because an affordable housing with regards to what rent is nowadays is not really affordable for those people that are living on that poverty level. So when we talk about the percentage of affordable housing that these developers must require, it needs to be a lot more in line with our poverty line and our homelessness level, rather than the average salary that some of our military members and military
And I don't just
are
agree with
making,
you.
and those people that are making $100,000. So do know that I think that affordable housing price, and we need to talk about what that number is as a society, not city level, but what does that really look like for those people? Because I'm telling you, it is not $1,000 a month.
That's a great comment, and I'll say too that there's a big difference between affordable housing from the standpoint of being subsidized housing versus affordable housing meaning attainable by the average worker, right? And so understanding that distinction is really important, and it's difficult because people like to default to the term affordable housing. Well, that's not really the right term for what I think most people are talking about. I think most people are talking about attainable housing. Homes, whether it's condos or apartments or whatever, that can actually be purchased and occupied by teachers and firefighters and police officers and you know, the barista at Starbucks. I mean, all the folks that do the bulk of the heavy lifting in any community. And so the challenge becomes, it's a free capital market situation, right? What puts downward pressure on any price, whether it's a car or a house, is the availability of that product on the market. And so that's one of the challenges that we're facing. And I have heard a lot of frustration with density and a lot of frustration with apartments and things like that here this evening, and I appreciate and understand and respect that. But one of the ways you achieve downward pressure on the market, or at least a stabilization of the market, is by providing an adequate supply of the product, right?
Can I just
So-
comment on that specific point briefly, which is we really live in a world now in here where we don't really have a free capital market with downward pressure because we have venture capital organizations, companies that are foreign funded or funded in other places who have very deep pockets and not high interest rates to invest their money in, and thus there has been a rush to do these apartment complexes when the need for this community, the desirable need, and maybe our Realtor League of Women Voter citizen here can comment on this, is where are the entry-level homes and townhomes and communities that have green spaces that are livable,
So-
that encourage community?
I would love to address that. In the mid-90s, let's say 1997, for example, in the state of Colorado, 25% of residential product that was brought on market were condominiums. So for-purchase, fairly dense residential housing, condos. In 2007, the state of Colorado passed a construction defect law that basically precluded the ability for developers to build condominiums, and it was mostly because they were uninsurable. The workaround for a short period of time was wrap insurance, which helped a little bit. But does anybody know how many condominiums were built in Colorado Springs last year? Trevor?
Somewhere around zero.
Somewhere around zero.
Because there are ones right here on
It's a townhome, not a
I'm
condo.
sorry.
Oh, a townhome.
Townhome,
I'm
zero
sorry, you're
condos.
wrong. So there were precisely zero condos built in El Paso County last year.
There are 3
okay?
stories.
I will ask you another question. What do you think is the most affordable form of home ownership? Is it a big, ranch on 2.5 acres out in Black Forest? It's a condo. Most people, in order to enter the real estate market, buy condos. Well, if we're not building any condos, I think it's pretty obvious what the problem is. So, the construction defect law was one of the things that I went and testified at the state about. They sort of blindly looked at me and went on about their business. But that's the root of the problem. If we can't build attainable housing that people can buy into and build equity in, they will never be able to convert that equity into a starter family home or a larger home or a second home, so on and so forth. We all know that
So where does that?
because there's no other choice.
There's no other choice.
There's no other choice.
Where do the condos start?
What condos? There are no
Okay,
condos
the
being built.
condos are townhomes. What are they running at?
Less than 300,000, but I can get you in a townhome for less than 300,000, but your HOA, you know how much your HOAs are, so condos are no different, so I'm
Right.
sorry. So let's talk about, I disagree.
Well, you
with
can get in a
I can
home.
get in a townhome just as easily as I can get in a condo. Manitou Springs has got one on sale, literally, just went on the market yesterday, $349 in Manitou Springs. So I kind of disagree with you on the condo thing, but it is another option. I'm always about options here. So attainability. We need to educate our peoples more about what that looks like with regards to, can you get a no down payment loan? We don't teach our children what it looks like on a mortgage or a budget, and that's a shame. So for regards to us educating ourselves, I think attainability looks different for everybody, so educating ourselves is number one. And I would like the city to take a more proactive approach with regards to what that looks like, and be a little bit more
I
proactive.
think education could be a better.
FHA loans and all of what that looks
Could
like.
be.
So
I
think
do
the
know,
city
like
could
in
do
the
that.
last 10 years, I saw a statistic that 10 years ago, the average home buyer, first time home buyer was 32 years old. Now it's 38.
So this, at
Military's a little less.
Fillmore and Centennial, Locale is the name of the builder. They built, I guess they're calling them townhomes, but it looks like an apartment building to me, and in other places they might call it a condo. I'm not sure the distinction matters that much to me. The point is, you are required to live in a dense situation where you don't have control over really have control over your costs because of the HOA crises that we have right now in terms of the cost to maintain and to get everybody to comply. And so let's say you can, like they started about 400,000, okay, for maybe a 1,200 square foot townhome. But you also have to pay a monthly maintenance fee for the pool, whether you want it or not, and all of that other stuff. And that can go up. So it's difficult. It's still not really attainable for first-time homeowners or people looking to own. And I think, you know, that's unfortunate, and I would love to see the city become more aggressive about requiring developers to build a certain percentage of attainable, truly attainable housing. I mean, my understanding of the planning process 30 years ago here was that there was a master plan and you could rely on that, so that if there was, you know, parkland behind your house or it was going to be single family homes, you could rely that that's what would happen. That is not the case anymore, and it seems like there isn't really a vision for what the community is going to look like and who those homes are going to serve. Right now we have a dearth. We have way too few of some things we need and way too many of others, and yet what's in the pipeline? It's more not locally owned, super dense apartments without added services, park space, things like that. I was taught as a child not to buy more than I could, not to get more stuff than I could take care of. I think the city is getting more stuff than they can take care of. We need more police, we need to take care of our roads, we need fire evacuation plans that are shared, we need a way to address mental health and homelessness. So it's not to stop building on the west side, but why are we full steam ahead when we're just adding to our problems?
I appreciate those comments, and we've got about 10 minutes left, so if there are other comments or other topics that you want to talk about, I think we want to be sure to have that.
The 3 hotels that were built downtown just recently, 25-year tax abatements. Okay?
Okay.
That's a start. Now you add in Shields, you add in Colorado College, they got $8 million from the city for their ropes and arena.
No, that was actually state money.
That's state money.
No.
Yes, that was state money. That was city.
Not state money. It was city money given to Colorado College for the ropes and arena.
Okay.
Okay? Non-profit, we're not getting a damn dime out of Colorado College. Plus you've got the non-profit hotel outside the East Gate of the Air Force Academy, you're not going to get any money out of it.
So the question that was asked was how much has actually been paid in tax incentives? And I'm telling you that so far zero has been paid in tax. I'm telling you, sir, that zero has been paid in tax incentives. And the reason for that is that in order for them to apply for those tax incentives, they have to meet certain benchmarks. They have to hire a certain number of people over a 10-year period of time or a 5-year period of time, and they have to invest a certain amount of money in the economy over that period.
The other thing we have one of the lowest property tax rates in the nation.
That's why we're not growing.
It's way low.
Or we're growing, but we're not having
Okay, so
revenue.
it's really, really low. Okay.
It's too low.
And so we use a sales tax base, which 25% of that sales tax base comes from tourism.
Okay.
So 25% of our stuff.
We taxpayers are going to pay for underground parking of a 36-story apartment building downtown. Now,
I don't know how you get that. So
from a very good inside source in the city, okay? We should not be building a underground parking garage for a developer near the USOC Museum. because that's where it's gonna go in one of the parking lots. So, that has got to stop. Also, when it comes to Amara, we don't need Amara. It's gotta be stopped. We can't protect it. Even your own police department stood up there in city council and said, we might be able to get a patrol car there. You can't even take care of what you got. So you have to tell Doug Quimby, thank you very much for taking your projects under the list.
Any other comments? Yeah. Sure.
So I teach emergency readiness. I'm also a volunteer with the Office of Emergency Management, and I create contingency plans for businesses. I also live on the northeast side of the town, the northeast Briargate area. I've been in Colorado Springs for 10 years, and I've seen a lot of the massive growth. The density issue is not just on the west side of town, it is also along the whole Powers corridor. In the summer of 2022, we had 3 urban wildfires that all required evacuations. The farm up at North Peak, Stetson Hills, and then close to the airport. All 3 of those required evacuations. Several weeks ago, we just had a big fire out near Mark Shuffle. We cannot assume that the fire is only going to come from the mountains anymore. So, yes, we have a road infrastructure issue. I totally get that. We're not about to change Powers. We're not about to change Woodman. Woodman is the only road in this entire city that goes directly from west to east, all the way out to 24. So my concern is that I hope that City Council will really consider incorporating the density issue also on the east side of town and in that Powers corridor as well.
Okay, thank you. Good
I think one of the issues that, and to speak to that, one of my issues, when I think of development, okay, well, one, we need affordable housing, right? But we need affordable housing next to the workplace.
Right.
And so when we have a large employer or something that's not being served very well with the available real estate that's there, then I'm kind of open to an idea. As long as there's good transit, it's connected to the bus system, which is horrible, but you know, we try, right? But and that needs to improve. Then there's some technology that they're trying to work on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
We'll see if that comes. But
I think that's, I'm sorry.
but that's where I mean that to understand my principles. That's what I'm looking at. I don't want to just build something to build it. It's got to be connected.
Right.
Walkability. It's got to have walkability.
And that density issue, that's where the evacuation mapping and modeling really has to come into play. Because where I live, there's multiple neighborhoods that are going to be vying. If like I live now a half a mile from the evacuation line from where the Black Forest fire was. That was in 2013. And so now you have Cordera, you have Pine, you have all of these major developments in the, because I'm going to tell you straight up, Banning Lewis Ranch ever had to evacuate, it's not going to happen. If you've ever driven through Banning Lewis Ranch, it's like you get lost.
Maze.
It is, it's a total maze. And so evacuation modeling is going to be absolutely essential. Because where I live, there are going to be multiple neighborhoods vying for one intersection just to get to Powers. Because if you take Union all the way out, past Cordera, it just winds up turns into a little dirt road. And you can't evacuate over there. Not Cordera, not where I live, not that whole Pine Creek area. So that's not just the only issue. We've got Stetson Hills, the hospital, St. Francis, all of these, right, exactly, are going to be all vying for the same exact choke points. So evacuation modeling. And I understand that, and I'm not sure I don't know if it's the fire department, says, yes, everybody knows their zones, but that's it. People don't know their zones. People don't understand what that even means. Like, my phone's been going off for days. We had weather watches with the snow, and now we got fire weather and all of this stuff. And so we do need, and that's where, I try to do a lot of education, but we really need to do a lot more education for people, even individuals, knowing what their evacuation routes are.
So who does that, to go around the neighborhoods and tell people?
Well, I'll be
Neighborhood
honest.
evacuation plans, like, is that part of, you work with them?
There's fire mitigation.
We don't have,
Fire mitigation program? No, so I work with CERT, which is Community Emergency Response Team. That's part of the Office of Emergency Management. It's a FEMA program, but they cannot, like, again, they're totally underfunded. Like, we're all volunteers. I'm a volunteer. I have a full-time business, right? So even the Office of Emergency Management too is underfunded. We only have limited resources where we can go and do community awareness. I've been trying to get into some of these apartment complexes to say, hey, I'll do a free workshop on emergency readiness for your residents. And honestly, it's all crickets. Like, I can't even get a response.
Well, I know the fire chief goes out to some members of council when they have those.
Right.
There's also a fire mitigation team.
Yes.
You can join and get lots of information. They'll come to your neighborhood.
There's an evacuation plan.
There is.
For the,
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to, he's got some COS.
Yeah, it's the zone system is what it is.
What's the evacuation plan, COS on?
Ready COS.
Ready COS.
We have flyers up front if you
Yeah.
guys.
There you go. Yeah.
So we have flyers for Ready COS out there.
Yeah.
Who had a question that didn't get buried?
Well, it's an observation. We started off talking about public safety.
Yes.
We spend most of our time on policing, which is the preponderant need, I do believe. But when we talk about public safety, we're also talking about fire and emergency medicine. And the thing about our fire department is, you know, they respond to every 911 call no matter what. They don't prioritize, just say we're not coming. They come. What that means is that the call volume that our stations are going to is extremely high. They're not sitting around playing peanuts anymore. They're going to call after call. 80% of them are medical calls. My issue, or my question is, what I'd like for you all to think about is, we are building new fire stations in newly developed areas, but we're not infill. We have not done an infill fire station as far back as anybody wants to find. And they're busy and they're overtasked. My example, my question for you to think about is downtown. Okay, Station 1, Station 8 cover downtown. What additional manning, what additional equipment has been put in those fire stations in the last 5 years? And you know what development has happened in the last 5 years? The answer is nothing. They're staffed and equipped exactly like they were 5 years ago.
So your
That
question's
can't be
you're
right.
half right. You're half right, okay. They did a study in 2014 on 911 calls. And what they found is there was over 1,000 phone calls came from 7 phone numbers.
The frequent flyers.
1,000 phone calls came into 911 from 7 phone numbers. And so what that started is, what if the police, the fire chief at the time said, well, what if we just went and knocked on those 7 doors and figured out what their problem was? And that's kind of, that's been what has kind of happened. So what's happening is we have a hot team now. So when you call 911, you're kind of triaged. It's like, well, what kind of emergency do you have? And they go through, they categorize it. They might not send a full truck. They have smaller vehicles, they have the CRT program, they have the HOP team, they have a number of different groups. And so they don't necessarily will send full truck anymore. They used to do that. Now they don't. So there's a little bit less demand on that full truck because they've reallocated these calls that don't need a truck. You know what I'm saying? But they'll have other pieces of things. And there's a component where, you know, we both are going to be looking at AMR, and the idea of if the fire department had the ambulance service too, they could even refine it even more on what kind of delivery is needed, precisely whatever, and there could be a huge cost savings to our citizens based off of sending the appropriate equipment for the appropriate thing. So that's all going on with technology right now. I mean, they probably have like a dozen different options that they will slot in and send.
How does that
So,
pay for it?
and just real quick, I want to also comment.
We're paying for this, but it's cheaper because we don't send
Like,
a big
how-
fire
if
truck.
we separate it all like that, like how does that pay?
Well,
It's
the fire
same.
department.
So it's still paid the same, it's
So-
not any extra money on the taxpayer.
I just want to go back to your original comment and just maybe clarify two things. One, Station 25, which I believe is under construction now.
No, it's
or-
built,
It's built.
it's ready.
Station
That's
25 was an infill, and the downtown station was expanded in 2018, 19, something like that. So the fire department is looking at, to Dave's point, where is the call volume coming from? What resources do we need to deploy where? And they are being pretty mindful about that. So
My suggestion to you is, as overseers of these organizations is, yes, they're being progressive, they're doing their best, they're being innovative, still not enough.
Sure.
That's my assertion.
Okay.
Well, I don't disagree with that, but I will have to say, our fire department won an award for like one of the best fire departments in the country, just this last year. I'm trying to think about what the name was. But they are fully staffed, and people want to work at the fire department. And so I just have to applaud that we have a great chief for the fire department and a great staff, and they're really doing a really good job. And they're coming up with innovative ideas, which I really, really like. So, really excited.
So I know it's right at 7 o'clock. I don't want to be respectful of everyone's time. Really appreciate you all coming out. Thank you for your tough questions. Thank you for the discussion that we've had here. Just know that we're available and happy to.
So here's a couple of things. One, Sam, come on in. So Sam's kind of our
constituent.
Yeah, he's our main guy. And
Most of you know me.
if there's something you want us to follow up on or whatever, Sam kind of will handle that. Any part of the city, he fields every question.
2,000 and 3,000 most years.
Yeah. And so this is kind of Sam's contact information. Does a great job, by the way. And he'll help you get your question answered, whatever that might be, or if it didn't today fully. So anyway.
Again, thank you all for coming out.
Thank you all for coming out.
You guys